Today, we're going to unlock the secret to one of history's most enduring civilizations. We're talking about ancient Egypt and the single powerful idea that held it all together for, get this, 3,000 years. Okay, so let's just dive right into the big question. How on earth does a society thrive with incredible stability for 3 whole millennia? I mean, was it just pure military might? Was it some kind of economic genius? Well, the answer, as it turns out, is a lot simpler and way more profound. It was all built on one single idea. Ma'at. You're going to want to remember that name. This one concept was the spiritual and philosophical bedrock for absolutely everything that followed, from the pharaoh's crown all the way down to the farmer's plow. So, to really get Egypt, you first have to understand its guiding principle. You could almost think of it as its cosmic operating system. See, Ma'at wasn't just a list of rules or a law code. To the Egyptians, it was the inherent structure of the universe itself, the divine harmony that made the sun rise every morning and the Nile flood its banks right on schedule. It was just the way things were supposed to be. And of course, every good principle needs its opposite, its villain. For Ma'at, that was Isfet, chaos, lies, and injustice. The entire goal of Egyptian civilization, from the very top to the very bottom, was this constant, active struggle to uphold Ma'at and to push back the forces of Isfet. So, in this cosmic battle, who was the main defender? Who was the champion of order? Well, that job fell to the pharaoh. His role was nothing less than being the divine guarantor of Ma'at on earth. The pharaoh's job description wasn't just rule the country. It was maintain cosmic balance. Every single thing he did, leading armies against foreign chaos, building massive temples for the gods, performing sacred rituals, it was all a direct act of upholding Ma'at. It was probably the most important job in the entire world. And this commitment was literally built into the pharaoh's identity. His name wasn't just a name, it was a 5-part mission statement, what's called a titulary. Each one of these names connected him to the gods and his sacred duty, basically reinforcing his divine right and responsibility to rule. You know those symbols the pharaoh's always holding, the crook and the flail? Well, this quote just perfectly captures what they meant. The crook represented his role as a gentle shepherd to his people, that's the benevolence. But the flail, that represented his authority to punish and maintain order, that's the formidable might. You had to have both to keep Ma in balance. Now, this idea didn't just stop with a king. Nope. The entire structure of Egyptian society was seen as a physical manifestation of Ma'at, like a great social pyramid of order. Right at the absolute peak, the capstone of it all, you have the pharaoh. He wasn't just a king, remember, he was seen as a living god on earth, the main channel through which cosmic order flowed down into the human world. Right below him were the pillars of the realm. You had the vizier, who was kind of like the prime minister running the day-to-day state. You had the high priests, managing the gods' vast lands and wealth. And, crucially, you had the scribes, the literate elite who were the administrative backbone of the entire kingdom. And who was supporting all of this? The skilled hands and the foundation of sustenance. We're talking about the artisans and craftsmen who built and beautified Egypt. And, of course, the vast majority of the population. The farmers and laborers whose work, tied to the rhythm of the Nile, literally fed the whole civilization. But here's the key thing to understand. This wasn't just a rigid class system like we might think of it. It was seen as an interconnected organism. Each level depended on every other level to function properly. There was this profound understanding of mutual reliance. The farmer was just as essential to cosmic order as the priest was. That harmony was Ma'at in action. Okay, so let's zoom in a little on those upper echelons, specifically the priesthood. They weren't just spiritual leaders praying all day, they were the spiritual administrators of Ma'at. And it was a really complex organization. You had the high priest at the very top, the first servant of God. You had lector priests who were masters of the sacred texts, and you even had specialist priests, like astronomers who set the calendar and physicians who took care of the body. Everyone had a very precise role in keeping the divine engine of Egypt running. And you have to understand, temples weren't just quiet places for prayer. They were massive economic institutions. They were divine estates that owned huge areas of land. They employed thousands of people, and they wielded immense real-world power.
And inside this powerful institution, there was one particular role held by a woman that could at times wield power that rivaled the pharaoh himself. This was the god's wife of Amun.
I mean, this was a hugely powerful office. As the female counterpart of the high priest, she controlled her own vast estates and wealth. And critically, she could adopt her own successor. This effectively created a parallel female priestly dynasty that could last for generations. Incredible, right?
So we've seen Ma'at at the level of the cosmos, the state, and the temple. But what did it mean for the average person? How did this huge, grand idea actually shape daily life and, what happens after? It's really easy to look at that pyramid structure and just assume it was completely rigid, right? That you were born into your place and you stayed there forever. But was that actually true? Well, not entirely. It was definitely difficult, but social mobility was possible. The absolute surest path was education. If a commoner could learn to read and write and become a scribe, they could rise to real power. Distinguished military service could earn you land and titles. And of course, if you were exceptionally skilled at something, you might just catch the eye of the pharaoh himself. But for every single person, from the lowest laborer to the pharaoh himself, there was one final, ultimate test that no one could escape. In the afterlife, your heart, which they believed was the seat of your conscience and all your deeds, was weighed on a giant scale against the single pure feather of the goddess Ma'at. If your heart was heavy with Isfet, with chaos and lies and bad deeds, you faced oblivion. But if it was as light as the feather, if it was true, you achieved eternity. And this brings us all the way back to where we started. For 3,000 years, this one concept of cosmic order, of Ma'at, was the glue that held Egyptian civilization together. It defined their king, it structured their entire society, and it guided every single individual's life and death. And it really leaves you wondering, could a single unifying idea truly be the source of a civilization's greatest, most enduring strength?